Music, and the choice of music, is one of the most important facets of filmmaking. On this channel, I've spoken about music in its many forms, about the creative process, about running a band, about the technology behind recording, but one of the things I'm obsessed with that I've never spoken about is how it's used in film to tell stories. So, how do you use music to tell stories? Well, in order to show you, I want to break down a piece by filmmaker and journalist Johnny Harris called The Dangers of Ignoring Julian Assange. Johnny Harris is probably my biggest influence when it comes to using music in storytelling. There's an inherent musicality to his work. He uses music to structure his stories, to make the intellectual emotional, to make you lean in, pay attention, and care. Now, this video in particular is a 30-minute piece covering the entire story of Julian Assange, from the inception of WikiLeaks to his current conflict facing extradition to the US and potentially 175 years in jail. But now, if you remove the music, we're looking at 30 minutes of exposition, backstory, and political commentary. No matter how good the visuals, it's incredibly hard to get people to stick around for 30 minutes of information-dense and complex material. But by leveraging music, not only does it become possible, but the story becomes enthralling. There's an emotional significance given to the story, and you leave that video not only understanding what's happened, but caring about it. It's an outstanding piece of work. And I just want to show you some of the musical techniques at play here that make it so good. So this analysis is in 3 parts. The first is about the opening theme, how music in the opening sequence helps set up the narrative arc. Second, I'll be covering smaller details, the choice of specific music, arrangement ideas, and how music interacts with and supports dialogue. And third, I want to zoom out and look at more thematic ideas, music as characters, and ultimately the role that music plays in a story. And by the way, credit to Tom Fox, who composed the music for this video. You did an insane job. Let's have a look.
On a spring day 10 years ago, a 41-year-old Australian man named Julian Assange dressed up as a motorcycle delivery man. He dyed his hair, put colored contacts in his eyes, and even put a rock in his shoe so that he would walk differently than normal.
So this opening is steeped in confusion and mystery. The music is vague, you have a rhythmic bass line that's coming in and out, and there are dissonant drones to give you this ambience of uncertainty. It's the start of a crime mystery drama, not unlike the things you'd find as a Netflix documentary.
He was sure he was being followed by dark government forces that were attempting to capture him and send him to the United States to be locked up. He showed up here, to the Embassy of Ecuador in central London.
Out of that vague opening, a rhythm has now emerged. The bass line is more predominant. As we gain clarity on the subject, a theme musically is emerging.
Once inside this embassy, he wouldn't be on British soil anymore. No one could barge in here and grab him. He'd be safe. It's called political asylum.
So we already have moments between his voiceover where the music is more present, and it's building on this intense, dark, scary feeling. We have brief moments of space in this intro where the music is the dominant element, pushing forward the emotion, the intensity of the subject he's about to speak about.
Ecuadorian embassy in London, he wouldn't leave it for 7 years.
Testing 1, 2, 3.
And another cut. The song has been taking shape and then is pulled away again.
I've been looking at a lot of this.
Even that part, I love this. Even in moments where there isn't any music, there's a musicality or rhythmicness in the edits he makes. Like, that can be turned into a beat. Anyway, so the music's been pulled away before it really reached its climax yet, which suggests to you that that's still going to happen, and the lack of music here is not the end of the intro, but actually an excursion into something else. Because there's 2 things that Johnny Harris has to do in this intro. He has to introduce the subject matter and the emotion that we should associate with that, and he has to introduce himself as a character, as the personality that's going to carry the story. Now, the character Johnny plays in his videos is that of a slightly neurotic, paranoid researcher that's uncovering all of these truths, that's cataloging all of this information, and is bursting to present to you, to lay it all out so that you can see what he's seen. He's chosen not to put any music when he's introducing himself as a character, which is kind of a smart thing to do because he wants to appear neutral in this video. Now that he's introduced his character, given you a bit of background, we can go back to the music we had in the intro. But we're only going to get back to the music once he's given you the critical line to lead you back into the narrative, which is...
I want to tell you the story of Julian Assange.
This guy's a traitor.
I love WikiLeaks.
This is a blow to transparency and a blow to a free press.
What this story is like an expression of a new kind of power.
We've returned to a build-up, the music is back, and he's going to give you the final pointers for what this story entails before giving you the climax.
The power of secrets, of information.
An anti-war online organization attacking U.S. policy in Afghanistan.
And the reason I'm calling what Julian Assange does power is because the U.S. is trying to lock him up for 175 years because of what he did. It's all here in this indictment. The most powerful country in the world feels threatened by this man and what he's done. I want to take you through Julian Assange's story and then to unpack why the United States is trying to lock him up for the rest of his life. And I want to persuade you that no matter what you think of Julian Assange and his conduct and his ethics and his mission, this case should not be ignored.
Illegally shoot the son of a...
It's so satisfying to reach that moment in the video, but why are we getting a reward at this point in the story? We've watched, 2 minutes 30 of the video, like congratulations, we haven't gotten to any material yet. Why is there a reward? The reward here is that we've gotten our way through a lot of chaos and a lot of different things that don't make sense right now, and we've arrived at a question, which is what has happened to Julian Assange? What is his story? And we're rewarded for that because we understand our mission now. We understand what this video represents, and we've set up the main arc, which is to reach resolve on that question. But you can't go ahead and answer that question instantly after that, then the video would be over. In order to answer that question, we're gonna have to dive into somewhere else.
Okay, let's get up to speed really.
Okay, this is instantly great. Before we can get back to the intensity, the emotional gravity of the main question, we have to go somewhere else. We have to get more information. We have to understand the situation better. The pacing of the entire following scene is tied to the rhythm of this soundtrack. It's less intense and bottom heavy and nervous compared to the intro theme. And there's an important reason for that. This gives us an openness to be able to look from a distance at all the material, to start understanding it, to reach clarity. Instead of having an emotional reaction to the material, we're ingesting rationally a lot of information to make sense of things. This is something that Johnny Harris himself has talked about, this idea of having thinking pieces and feeling pieces. There's some music that makes you feel things, and there's other music that makes you think, or that makes you lean in to pay attention to information. And Johnny Harris, throughout his videos, is playing this beautiful dance where he's jumping between moments of thinking to moments of feeling.
Julian Assange is an Australian hacker who spent most of his life breaking into computers and getting his hands on information that he wasn't supposed to see, but that he believed the world should see. When he was 35, he built a web.
Even there, that little moment in between his talking, the music is pulled up. If you put music underneath a scene with speech and you lower the volume so that it doesn't overpower the speech, it will sound like a song whose volume has been lowered. However, if the music has these moments where it comes up in between certain phrases, it will give you the impression that the music is slowly building in the background. There's an emotion that is building up even through sections which are very information heavy.
So that was 2006. Julian Assange builds WikiLeaks. And soon after, he starts receiving submissions. Like, people start giving him documents that are supposed to be secret, and he starts publishing them. Everything from drone strikes in Yemen to oil scandals in Peru to corruption in the Arab world, Tibetan uprisings in China. Leaks like this sort of seem common to us now, but this was like 2007. WikiLeaks was a totally new thing. It was this open source intelligence website.
For that last section, the music was pulled back. It was more simple. There were only a few elements remaining. There is as much power in pulling back a song as there is in building it up slowly. What does pulling back a song tell you? It tells you that the song is coming towards the end of its duration where something new is supposed to happen. And that means you've built in an expectation for a change coming soon into the video through the music. So even though he continued talking for another 20 seconds, you are already anticipating a change in mood before it's happened. You see how incredible that is? Like, that is a tiny detail that will subconsciously make you pay attention because you're anticipating change, even though the change is deferred. It's delayed until a later moment. Amazing stuff.
Understand how far you can push government into doing something.
Here, the music's been really reduced down and you're paying close attention to what Julian Assange is saying.
But WikiLeaks wasn't really noticed until 2010, when something happened that would change everything.
We've reached a new big intense moment. So we've had roughly 4 minutes of backstory and context to build up towards the next emotional moment, and it's gotten very serious again.
In Iraq, there was a 22-year-old American intelligence analyst named Chelsea Manning. Horrified by what she was seeing, she decided to download hundreds of thousands of classified documents.
These emotional cues you're getting musically are making you react differently and pay a different kind of attention to each bit of information you're getting. He is still providing backstory. He is still providing more context, introducing new characters and new events, but it feels very different because through the music, he's telling you that this is an intensely heavy thing.
From military computers and upload them directly to WikiLeaks.
Of course, our top story this morning, the White House.
There's this brief moment there of like 3 seconds of just these synths blaring at you full volume, and it is so good. Now, if you listen to any film scores, you will have noticed that a lot of film score composers will compose certain themes for certain characters or events. A certain character is introduced, they have a melody. When they reappear at a later point in the film, that melody comes back. And what Johnny Harris is doing with the songs in this video are not too different from that. Introduction score. It's this synth-heavy, electronic, bassy, emotive feeling. And whilst playing that song, he's introducing the main conflict, which is this guy, Julian Assange, and the US government, right? That is the big conflict. Between that intro and where we are now, we had the backstory of Julian Assange. And what happens at the 6-minute mark? The US government appears or reappears, and it reappears with the same emotional gravity. There's kind of an association made here between the US government and what they're doing and the danger of them, and synth-heavy, bassy, emotive music.
Into U.S. military records.
It was the biggest leak in history. And this is the stuff we've been looking through over the past few weeks. Hundreds of thousands of classified documents containing never-before-seen details on how the US conducts its war, its diplomacy, its intelligence.
Okay, so at this moment, he is covering what was the content of these leaks, the leaked drone footage showing the execution of civilians. There's a lot of very dark and very serious material that he has to cover here. Now, these are the kind of moments where I would struggle to have the confidence to pick the right music, because you are deciding for the audience what you want them to feel and what reaction you want them to have to things. And that is kind of your responsibility as a filmmaker. Like, you are responsible for communicating what emotional response you think is appropriate for the material you're showing. Now, there's a reason why I don't make videos about war and politics, because it is very difficult to do that right and not offend people or make people feel bad by getting the emotion wrong and the tone wrong in your music. This is tough stuff to do, and I think he's done a really good job here, but I do not envy the job of the film composer or himself in choosing these songs. That is a stressful thing to get right.
Come on, fire! Yeah, roger. Oh yeah, look at those dead bastards. Nice. Oh, it's their fault for bringing their kids to a battle. That's right.
How do you end a scene that has that kind of emotion in the music? You let it fade and you breathe and you have a moment to collect your thoughts, so that you can move on. The natural response someone has to watching that kind of material and seeing it for the first time is exactly the response he's put into the edit.
You read about this scene where an Apache helicopter is flying over some insurgents in a house.
And from there, he can bring back in a thinking soundtrack to start processing this information. It's weird to me that this is just a YouTube video available online. Like the techniques used here are those that come from documentaries and film, and it is very well done. And I just wanted to shed some light on that. All right, let me summarize some of the ideas that you can take away from this. First, leading with emotion at the beginning of the video creates a question for the audience. What information or story warrants that kind of emotional reaction? The audience knows that the rest of the video will be an answer to that question, and they will stick around to see you articulate it. Second, if you have music that is underneath speech and you let it come up for little periods in between phrases, you're creating a kind of dense energy underneath that scene. Imagine that this is the music. Whenever you're talking, you're pushing it down below. But when you stop for a moment, it comes up to the surface. And this creates a kind of energy and a sense of urgency in the music. It wants to be present and it's building underneath. Despite it being a very tiny detail, it's very different from having the music just at one level. There is no urgency, it's not building, it's just there. Third, pulling back on a song, withdrawing elements signals the end of a section. If you signal the end of a section 30 seconds before the actual end, it will create anticipation by the audience, knowing that the end is coming soon, is near. And anticipation creates engagement. All of film, all of the things that make you pay attention in film is all about building anticipation. What is going to happen now? I want to lean in and see because I care about it. If you signal that things are going to happen, that makes people watch. Fourth, and here we're getting to kind of an advanced idea, associate music with characters in your story. Julian Assange is a character. The US government is a character. In moments when those two collide, we want to call back the musical theme. I could honestly go on about this stuff for hours, but it was never my intention to make this comprehensive. As long as I've sparked your curiosity for music as a means of telling stories, I'm happy. Because the real thing I want is for you to start experimenting with music yourself, and I have two things that can help you. First, I've decided to make my entire music catalog free to download and use. This includes my first album, instrumentals, as well as a collection of songs that I wrote specifically for my videos, which I've never released before. I encourage you to download them, experiment with them, and send me whatever you make. I would love to see it. To be clear, you can use this music in YouTube videos that are monetized. I will not copyright strike you. It's all on Bandcamp. You can name your own price, including zero, so it is free. But if you do decide to pay, whatever the amount, it goes towards making more music and videos, and I appreciate it. I've never asked or even allowed people to contribute money to this project, so it's a little weird saying stuff like this, but cool. Second of all, if you want to learn more about this topic, Johnny Harris actually has a visual storytelling course together with Nathaniel Drew, where he discusses in detail how he uses music in his films. So if you want to see more of him discussing it, I've left the link for this course in the description. Go check that out, and I will see you next week.
How much is your life worth? How much is your life worth? How much do you deserve? How much do you deserve?